Veronica Whitney-Robinson wrote very fast. Star Wars Galaxies, the massively multiplayer online role-player game, was set to come out in summer of 2003, and LucasArts and Del Rey decided that maybe a tie-in novel would be the way to go. So they reached out to Whitney-Robinson, who had previously written novels for Wizards of the Coast. She submitted a draft of the story to them in August, and by early September she had already written half the story. Considering that Star Wars Galaxies, The Ruins of Dantooine was published on December 30th, 2003, I would say that Whitney-Robinson is a very speedy author indeed. So this novel was one that I think I had heard about, but I never saw in the flesh and never felt compelled to read, partially because I never played the online game and didn't really have any knowledge of it or interest in it. It was only when I was compiling my list of what to read this year for the prequel releases that I sort of realized that this was a Star Wars book at all. So, a brief summary. Hidden within the Jedi ruins on Dantooine is a holocron that contains the names of rebel sympathizers. And if this information were to get into the hands of the Empire, it would cause innumerable deaths. So Imperial bioengineer Dusque Finn, as well as rebel operative Finn Darktrin, are dispatched to retrieve the holocron. But Dusque will learn that the hardest part is figuring out whose side you're on and how far you're willing to go to win. So first, some background on Star Wars Galaxies. It was a Star Wars-themed, massively multiplayer online role-playing game, or MMORPG, developed by Sony Online Entertainment and published by LucasArts for Microsoft Windows computers. There was originally a plan to also release it for consoles, but that never panned out. The base game, titled Star Wars Galaxies: An Empire Divided, was released on June 26, 2003 in the US, and later in the rest of the world. And the base game was upgraded with 3 major expansions between 2003 to 2005. In addition to the initial cost of the software, there was also a monthly subscription fee, which was $14.99 US dollars, but there were discounts if you subscribed for long periods of time. A combat upgrade was released in April of 2005 that was a major rewrite of the combat armor and weapons systems, basically meaning that only certain professions could use specific weapons and armors. And this resulted in a lot of controversy from players who criticized the changes and canceled their subscriptions. Another set of game changes, dubbed the New Game Enhancements, began testing in November of 2005 and then went live later in the month. These changes reduced the number of 34 original professions to 9. And once again, there were lots of criticism of these changes, and huge negative player feedback was noted by media outlets outside the gaming industry. But people were still playing this game up until 2011, when Sony Online Entertainment announced that they would permanently shut down Star Wars Galaxies in December of 2011, mostly because Star Wars: The Old Republic had effectively replaced it. However, even after that shutdown, years later, people still play Star Wars Galaxies in emulator form. So even though it's a very old graphic style game at this point, there's still a lot of nostalgia involved for people. So Star Wars Galaxies: The Ruins of Dantooine was, I guess, an attempt to get book readers maybe interested in this online game. And likewise, I think if you have played Star Wars Galaxies in the past, you may get more enjoyment out of this book than a complete newbie would, because there are Easter eggs of locations and items that appear within the game, but to a new reader, you're not going to pick up on it at all. First of all, I feel like Del Rey really did this story dirty by giving it such a bad cover. It's obviously artwork from the game, but it's just that sort of middling to low quality CGI stuff that I really think that an actual illustration would have done a lot better, because as it is, I look at this book and I'm not really interested in reading it. The Ruins of Dantooine follows our heroine, Dusque Mistflyer, who is an Imperial bioengineer from Talos, but as the story progresses, she becomes frustrated with both her role within the Empire and what the Empire is doing, and ends up joining the rebels and helping them in their cause. She's joined for most of the journey by Finn Darktrin. No, not that Finn, another Finn, who's a rebel operative who's been dispatched to get Dusque, get her to help them because she has the right credentials to get them on Dantooine, retrieve the Holocron, and bring it back to Princess Leia and the rebel leaders. I did wonder why they were retrieving a Holocron, because my understanding was that Holocrons, Jedi Holocrons, and Sith Holocrons could only be accessed by someone with Force abilities, but I guess that within the game, holocrons are used to store information, and maybe there's like a third kind of holocron that anyone can access, because if not, the climactic ending here really couldn't have worked out. So when we first meet Dusque, she's on Naboo doing her job, accompanied by a fellow bioengineer who is an Ithorian. You know, these guys. She attends some sort of animal fight to the death Coliseum event and is disgusted by it, then goes into a casino. There's a one-page cameo appearance by Lando Calrissian, which really felt like a video game move. And then she meets Finn. He makes her question things. She heads off on a side quest with her Ithorian companion in search of these giant bats on one of Naboo's moons. They head back, and he is arrested and executed by the Imperials. This is really what turns Dusque to the rebel cause, because she wants to get revenge for her colleague. They head to Locke, have to do another side quest, meet Han Solo. You expect that Han Solo would be transporting them to the rebel base, but no, he's just following them. Another video game move. They crash on Corellia. C-3PO accompanies them to the rebel base, where they meet Leia and Luke and are given their mission. And it's not until chapter 10 of 15 that they finally leave for Dantooine. They go to Dantooine. There's a lot of more traveling. They get the Holocron. They make it off Dantooine. And then, spoilers, it is revealed that all along Finn has been actually an Imperial operative undercover with the rebels. He's able to send some of the names from the Holocron to his superiors, but Dusque gets it and jettisons it into space, and he stabs her, and it should be fatal, but Luke Skywalker and some other rebels show up, and they save her just in time. So as the book ends, Finn is back with the Imperials. He talks to Vader. He's in pretty good graces. Dusque is alive, and she's 100% siding with the rebels now. And you'd think, okay, they're probably going to show up in some other story and interact again, but unfortunately, that's it for these characters. Whitney-Robinson wrote a short story prequel to The Ruins of Dantooine that was published in Star Wars Insider about Dusque, and that came out before this novel. And then she wrote this novel, and then that's really it. As far as I could tell, she didn't write anything more in Star Wars, or really anything more, period. The author bio says that she's a marine biologist who lives in Washington State, so maybe she decided she didn't like writing tie-in novels and she just wanted to do her real job. So if I were to describe The Ruins of Dantooine, it is like a spy intrigue story with a stealth romance plot. I had no idea going into this that the romance between Dusque and Finn would be such a huge part of the story, and it is, and I mean, I guess it's okay. It's not the best romance, but I really was not expecting to find it here. I also have to be honest that I was not expecting the number of side quests that appear here, just the fact that they don't even head to the titular planet until like 2/3 of the way into the story, so much of it is these fetch quests or these useless side quests that don't really have any relevance on the story, just seem to be an opportunity to show the different worlds that appear in the Galaxies game, and especially, I guess it makes sense because Dusque is a bioengineer, but there is an awful lot with animals here, like so many different creatures, what they're like, what they eat, and she's always talking about this and bringing this up, which I found honestly a little strange. I guess it works with her job, but it wasn't really what I was expecting here. I also wish that the appearance of original trilogy characters had been a little better integrated into the story, because as it stands, they do feel like these cameo appearances meant to make the reader go, oh, but Lando doesn't need to be there at all. I thought that maybe Han would transport them in the Millennium Falcon, but they're riding in this completely other ship and Han's just there. And then Leia at the end says some weird comment to Dusque like, I'm so proud of you, like you were my sister. And I want to be like, Leia, you just met this girl. You don't know her at all. Even the fact that Luke rescues Dusque at the end, like there's other rebels involved, but it's mainly Luke. I don't know. I understand why they put them in here, but they're just completely unnecessary. And the story did feel a bit fanfiction-y to me. I guess mostly the characters' names, like Dusque, Mistflyer, Finn, Darktrin. Sometimes I complain that in Star Wars books the characters' names sound too much like Earth, but this sounds too much like a Star Wars name generator, and just Whitney-Robinson put in some aspects of their characters and it like blooped out these names for us. It's hard to get a grasp on Finn because he's mostly just like really involved in things, and she can tell that he has some hurt, but we never find out what it is, and then he ends up being an Imperial agent anyway, so I don't know, didn't get much of a read on his character. And with Dusque, I thought she was nice. I did wish, though, that Whitney-Robinson had not used the trope of Dusque being not like other girls, that she doesn't care about her appearance, she doesn't care about feminine things. But then at the same time, she has waist-length hair. And as someone who has had very long hair in the past, I can tell you that that is not a no-maintenance hairstyle. Like, that's a lot of work. And if you don't care what you look like, I don't see yourself having such long, labor-intensive hair. Like, it didn't work for me. I also felt like there was a lot of mention of the fact that since Dusque is a woman in Imperial service, like, she's not gonna get promoted, no one pays attention to her, no one listens to what she has to say, which is probably true. It just felt clunkily integrated into the story. And I wish that could have played a bigger role into why she chooses to side with the rebellion, like not just her family history and the Ithorian being executed in front of her, but just the realization that she's never going to accomplish anything here, that her morals and ideals do not align with the Empire's, and that she doesn't see herself with a future there. So, in short, I sometimes see the Ruins of Dantooine described as the worst Star Wars novel, or one of the worst Star Wars novels, and I don't think it is. I do think that the amount of time Whitney-Robinson spent on the story is reflected in it, although to be honest, a lot of Star Wars stories had to be written in a shortened span of time. I think really other than Darth Plagueis, most of them, the author would get the contract and they would turn it in a year later. And while, writing a story in the span of like a month or two is definitely hugely abbreviated, it's not that far outside of the normal. I guess I wish that the Ruins of Dantooine wasn't so contingent upon knowledge of the Star Wars Galaxy story. And also just that all the video game aspects in here, like cameos by original trilogy characters and all these side quests and stuff, took away from the story. I think there's a kernel of a good story here. It just wasn't developed to its potential. And the fact that we never revisit these characters again means that they really don't get a chance to develop and grow. It's just like generic Imperial agent masquerading as a rebel and generic Imperial scientist who realizes the wrongs of her ways. Whitney-Robinson obviously had a lot of fun with all of the creatures and locations visited, but it's just like a mediocre intrigue quest story and not really important for your understanding of anything in Star Wars. And yes, I still wish that it had gotten a better cover. So next time I'm going to be reading an e-book novella by Timothy Zahn about the stormtrooper unit that appears in Survivor's Quest, Fool's Bargain.